Maya's sneakers squeaked on the polished linoleum as she pushed the medication cart down the corridor of St. Augustine Medical Center. 3rd floor, private wing. The air here smelled different from the rest of the hospital. Less antiseptic, more cedar, and expensive cologne that lingered even months after the man in room 312 had last been conscious. She stopped at the door, checked the chart. Harrison Cole. 51 years old. Real estate mogul. Net worth somewhere north of $4 billion, according to the nurses who like to gossip during break. Traumatic brain injury following a car accident 8 months ago. No next of kin on file. Just a team of lawyers who called every Friday and a private physician who stopped by twice a week to review the vitals. Maya had been assigned to him for the past 3 months. She pushed the door open with her hip and wheeled the cart inside. The room was large by hospital standards, a private suite, really, with tall windows overlooking the city. Someone, probably the lawyers, paid extra for flowers. There was always a fresh arrangement on the windowsill. White lilies today. "Good morning, Mr. Cole," she said, the way she always did. She talked to him. She knew some nurses didn't bother. What was the point, they said. But Maya had read enough studies, and more than that, she simply felt it was right. He was a person. He was in there somewhere. She set about her work. Checked the monitors. Adjusted the 4-drip. Logged the numbers in the chart with the quiet efficiency of someone who had done this so many times it had become its own kind of meditation. Then came the part that required the most care, changing him. She worked quickly and gently, the way her supervising nurse had taught her in her first week. No hesitation, no disgust, just professionalism and a steady pair of hands. "You've got good color today," she told him, smoothing the fresh sheet across his legs. "Better than yesterday. Dr. Patel thinks the swelling has gone down some more." She didn't say it exactly like that, but I could tell she was pleased. The monitors beeped their steady rhythm. "My mom called last night," Maya continued, moving to the window to check the blinds, tilting them so the morning light came in soft rather than harsh. "She wants me to come home for Thanksgiving. I told her I might be on shift. She said, and I quote, 'Maya, you cannot spend every holiday in that hospital.' She has a point. But also she'll spend the entire visit trying to set me up with someone from her church, so." She smiled to herself and returned to his bedside. This was her favorite part of the morning, if she was honest. Not the work. She was proud of the work, but it was hard, but the quiet that came after. The moment when the tasks were done and she could just sit for a few minutes before the next room. She pulled the chair close and flipped open the small notebook she kept in her pocket. She was studying for her RN licensing exam. Always studying. She read in silence for a while. The room held its breath around her. She had just turned the page when she heard it. A sound. Not a machine. Not the building settling or the cart in the hallway. Something closer. Something human. A low, rough exhale. The sound of lungs pulling in more air than usual, more deliberately than the shallow rhythm of unconsciousness. Maya looked up. Harrison Cole's eyes were open. She didn't scream. She didn't drop her notebook. Later she would think that her training had kicked in before her emotions could catch up, because what she did was stand, slowly, calmly, and lean forward, bringing herself into his line of sight. "Mr. Cole," she said. Her voice was steady. "My name is Maya. I'm your nurse. You're at St. Augustine Medical Center. You've been unconscious for a while. Can you hear me?" His eyes moved. They were dark brown, she noticed for the first time. She'd seen photographs of him in the file, the crisp headshots people like him have taken for magazine profiles, but photographs didn't capture the depth of them. They moved toward her slowly, like someone learning to use a compass. His lips parted. Nothing came out at first. Then, water. The word was barely a word. More like the idea of one. But Maya heard it clearly. "I'm going to call Dr. Patel right now," she said. "Don't try to move. You're safe. I'm right here." She pressed the call button with one hand and kept her eyes on him. He didn't try to move. He just watched her, that slow deliberate gaze tracking her around the room with the focused attention of someone trying to figure out where they had landed. Dr. Patel arrived in 4 minutes. Then 2 other nurses. Then a flurry of activity that Maya stepped back from, giving the room over to the people who needed to be there, retreating to the doorway where she stood and watched Harrison Cole, who had been a body in a bed for 8 months, answer yes and no questions with the faintest movements of his head. He was in there. She'd always believed it. But believing something and watching it become true in front of you were very different things. She was still standing in the doorway when his eyes found her again, past the doctor and the nurses and the equipment. He held her gaze for a moment. Just a moment. Then Dr. Patel moved and blocked the sight line, asking him to follow her finger, and the moment passed. Maya walked back to her cart. She had 4 more patients on the floor, but her hands, she noticed, were shaking slightly as she gripped the handle. Not from fear. From something else, something she didn't have a name for yet. The particular feeling of being present at the exact second a person comes back to the world. She took a breath, steadied herself, pushed the cart forward. Down the hall, through the door to room 314, she said good morning to her next patient and got back to work. She didn't know, then, what came next. She didn't know about the conversation Dr. Patel would have with her 2 days later, or the request that would arrive through the hospital administration, a personal request, they would say carefully, from the patient himself. She didn't know that Harrison Cole, in those first fragmented hours of consciousness, had asked the doctor only 2 questions. The first was, how long? The second was, what's the name of the nurse who was here when I woke up? Dr. Patel delivered the message herself, which Maya thought was unusual. Doctors didn't typically act as messengers. They had residents for that, or administrators, or the elaborate chain of hospital bureaucracy that existed precisely so that no one important had to walk down the hall and knock on a break room door. But there Dr. Patel was, knocking. He's asking for you specifically, she said, leaning against the doorframe with her arms crossed. She had the tone of someone reporting a fact they hadn't decided how to feel about yet. He's been awake for 36 hours now. Cognition is strong, stronger than we expected at this stage. He remembers the accident. He remembers his name, his company, his address. His memory before the injury appears largely intact. She paused. He also remembers you were in the room when he woke up. Maya set down her coffee. I'm his assigned nurse. Of course I was in the room. I know that. You know that. He knows that too. Dr. Patel uncrossed her arms. He's not confused, Maya. He's quite clear. He said, and I'm quoting directly here, I'd like to speak with her when she has a moment. Please tell her I'm not going anywhere. A faint smile. I thought that last part was funny, given the circumstances. Maya didn't smile. She was thinking, is there a clinical reason for me to go in there? No more or less than usual. Then I'll go in at my regular time tomorrow morning. Same as always. Dr. Patel looked at her for a beat. Okay, she said, and left. Maya picked her coffee back up. It had gone cold. She went in the next morning at 7:45, the same time she always did, with the medication cart and the chart and the quiet routine of it. She told herself it was no different. A patient was a patient. The fact that he was now conscious changed the work slightly, but not the nature of it. She pushed the door open with her hip. He was sitting up. Someone had adjusted the bed for him, and he was sitting up against the pillows with his hands resting on the blanket, looking out the window at the city below. He turned when she came in. In the photographs in his file, he looked like what he was, a man who controlled rooms, who sat at the heads of long tables. The weeks in the hospital had taken some of that away. He was thinner, and his face had the particular pallor of someone who hadn't seen sun in a long time. But his eyes were sharp. Sharper than she'd expected. The same dark brown she'd noticed when they first opened, and they found her immediately, the way they had through the crowd of doctors that first morning. You're Maya, he said. His voice was rough still, healing, but steady. I am. Good morning, Mr. Cole. How are you feeling today? Like someone who's been in a coma for 8 months. He watched her move to the monitors with something that wasn't quite amusement but was adjacent to it. They tell me you've been my nurse for 3 months of that. That's right. You talk to me. She noted the number on the blood pressure monitor and wrote it in the chart. Most nurses do. There's evidence that auditory stimulation can be beneficial for patients in your condition. The other nurses on this floor don't talk to their unconscious patients. I asked. Maya glanced over at him. You've been busy for someone who just woke up. I've had 36 hours with not much to do except think and ask questions. He shifted slightly against the pillows. You told me about your mother. Thanksgiving. A church she attends. Maya set the pen down and looked at him directly for the first time since entering the room. It was an odd feeling, to have been watched by someone who couldn't watch, to have been heard by someone who couldn't hear, and now to have that same someone sitting in front of her quoting her own words back to her. "I didn't know you could hear me," she said. "Neither did I, until I woke up and the memories were just there. Pieces of them. Your voice mostly." He paused. "You said I had good color. The morning I woke up. That was the last thing I remember hearing before I actually opened my eyes." Maya looked at him for a moment. Then she picked the pen back up and finished her notes because that was the job, and the job didn't stop for strange moments. "Your color was better that morning. I wasn't being polite." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile. Something more careful than that. "I believe you," he said. "You don't seem like someone who says things to be polite." She moved around the bed to check the four-line. "Is there something specific you needed to speak with me about, Mr. Cole? Dr. Patel said you asked for me." "I wanted to thank you." "You don't need to thank me. It's my job." "I know it's your job." He said it without any edge. Just patient. Clear. "I'm not thanking you for doing your job. I'm thanking you for how you did it." He looked at his hands on the blanket for a moment, then back at her. "I'm told I have very good muscle condition for someone who was unconscious for 8 months. Whoever worked with me on movement and positioning was thorough." He let that sit there. "I'm also told that you spent your break times in here twice a week reading out loud. Medical journals, mostly, because apparently you were studying." Maya said nothing. "The head nurse mentioned it," he said simply. "She thought I should know. Carol talks too much. She speaks very highly of you." He tilted his head slightly. "Why medical journals?" "I was studying for my licensing exam. It was convenient." "You could have studied anywhere." "I could have." She checked the last monitor and straightened up. "Is there anything you need before I move on to my next patient?" He was quiet for a second. Not the quiet of someone who had nothing to say. The quiet of someone choosing carefully. "The lawyers are coming this afternoon," he said. 8 months is a long time for a company to run without its CEO. There will be a lot to deal with. He glanced toward the window briefly, then back. "I function better when I have something that stays consistent. Something that doesn't change while everything else is moving." He met her eyes. "I'd like to keep you as my nurse. For as long as I'm here. If that's a decision you have any say in." "I'd have to talk to scheduling." "I already spoke with the hospital director this morning." Maya stared at him. "You've been awake for 36 hours. "I told you. I've been busy." This time it was closer to a smile. He said, "The final decision is yours." She looked at him for a long moment. The monitors beeped. Outside the window the city was bright and indifferent and going about its business. "I'll let you know," she said. She picked up the chart, tucked it under her arm, and walked out. In the hallway she let out a slow breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The cart was where she'd left it. She gripped the handle and pushed it forward. Down the hall. Next patient. Same as always. Except not quite.